My first question is, what are the key takeaways from the Holocaust and the circumstances that led to it that you would like for students to think about?
There are a few key takeaways that I think are really important when learning about the Holocaust. One of those first few takeaways is that this is not something that happened overnight. We didn't go from nothing to millions of people being killed and murdered by Nazi Germany just in a snap of a fingers. It was a progression that happened over the course of a lot of years. It started very small, with small acts of hatred, with different slurs that were being used, which led to propaganda, and then government getting involved. And that eventually then led to what ended up being deemed the Holocaust. But it did not happen overnight. There were much smaller steps. Another takeaway that's really important is that this can happen anywhere. Germany was considered one of the most educated countries in the world at the time during the Holocaust, when the Holocaust happened. And this is happening in other places around the world. This is not a one-time thing. Genocide is happening now. This is not the only genocide that has happened, though it is different in many ways. But it can happen anywhere in the world. And I would say those are kind of the two big takeaways that I would say are really important when thinking about the Holocaust, when thinking about genocide, and looking at the world around us today.
Thank you. Given your expertise in Holocaust and genocide studies, what words of advice or wisdom do you have for students?
So after spending so much time studying the Holocaust and different genocides, there's a couple of things that I've taken away from the stories that I've heard, from the people that I've met, and just from my education in general. The first is how important it is to really know what's going on in your world. So often we're living in the world of like our cell phones and our social media, and we forget that there's this whole world around us. And it's really important that we recognize and that we know what is happening outside of our town, outside of our state, outside of our country. Another thing that I would like students to take away that I think is really important for everyone to learn is really to ask questions. Don't just take things at face value. If you don't understand why something's happening, ask a question about it. If you see something online on the internet and you're questioning, maybe that's not true, look into it more, right? Not everything is fact. You need to make sure that you're asking questions and that you're looking deeper. And then the last thing, and probably the most important thing, is that it's really important for us to stand up and to speak out when we see injustices happening. You know, like I talked about before in my key takeaways, this didn't happen overnight. So it's really, really important that when we see even the smallest thing happen, that we stand up, that we speak out against these things, against these injustices, in order to really make a difference in our world and make sure things like this don't happen again.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley, for sharing your knowledge with us and for your time. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.